Good morning and welcome to Bible in a Year. Today is day 51. Now this is the last day in our period of Egypt and Exodus. As we move further on, we're going to be going into the desert wanderings. My name is Pastor Jay Lutz, and we're following together the adventure timeline created by Jeff Cavins. Today, we are going to be going through Exodus, chapter 39 and 40, which is the very end of Exodus, the end of Leviticus, Leviticus chapter 27, and Psalm 83. Exodus chapter 39, 40, we read about the priestly garments like the breastplate, the ephod, the turban, and the robes, and then Moses later inspects the tabernacle, and then gives details about the tabernacle and the tent of meeting, and how are they to be set up for what reasons. Leviticus 27 speaks to Moses, the Lord speaks to Moses about dedication and offerings to the Lord and how redemption in the sacrificial system works. And then lastly, Psalm 83 is a song of Asaph. Remember, this is one of the priestly orders, and psalm of lament or petition before God concerning the threat of invasion upon Israel. All right. So let's get started. Exodus chapter 39. From the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, they made woven garments for ministering in the sanctuary. They also made sacred garments for Aaron, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the ephod of gold, and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. They hammered out thin sheets of gold and cut strands to be worked into the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, the work of the skilled craftsmen. They made shoulder pieces for the ephod, which were attached to two of its corners, so it could be fastened. Its skillfully woven waistband was like it, of one piece, with the ephod and made with gold, and with the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and with finely twisted linen, as the Lord commanded Moses. They mounted the onyx stones in gold filigree settings, and engraved them like a seal with the names of the sons of Israel. Then they fastened them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses. They fashioned the breastpiece, the work of a skilled craftsman. They made it like the ephod, of gold, and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. It was square, a span long and a span wide, and folded double. Then they mounted 4 rows of precious stones on it. In the first row there was ruby, topaz, and beryl. In the second row, a turquoise, sapphire, emerald. In the third row, jacinth, agate, and amethyst. In the fourth row, chrysolite, and onyx, and jasper. They were mounted in gold filigree settings. There were 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel, each engraved like a seal with the name of one of the 12 tribes. For the breastpiece, they made braided chain of pure gold like a rope. They made 2 gold filigree settings and 2 gold rings, and fastened the rings to 2 of the corners of the breastpiece. They fastened the 2 gold chains to the rings at the corners of the breastpiece, and the other ends of the chains to the 2 settings, attaching them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. They made 2 gold rings and attached them to the other 2 corners of the breastpiece, on the inside edge next to the ephod. Then they made 2 more gold rings and attached them to the bottom of the shoulder piece on the front of the ephod, close to the seam, just above the waistband of the ephod. They tied the rings, the breast pieces to the rings of the ephod with blue cord, connecting it to the waistband so that the breast piece would not swing out from the ephod, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, the work of a weaver, with an opening in the center of the robe, like the opening of a collar, and a band around its opening so that it would not tear. They made pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen around the hem of the robe. They made bells of pure gold and attached them around the hem between the pomegranates. The bells and pomegranates alternated around the hem of the robe to be worn for the ministering as the Lord commanded Moses. For Aaron and his sons they made tunics of fine linen, the work of a weaver, and the turban of fine linen, the linen headbands, and the undergarments of the finely twisted linen. The sash was a fine twisted linen in blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, the work of an embroiderer, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the plate, the sacred diadem, out of pure gold and engraved on it, like an inscription on a seal, holy to the Lord. Then they fastened a blue cord to it to attach it to the turban, as the Lord commanded Moses. So all the work of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, was completed. The Israelites did everything just as the Lord commanded Moses. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its furnishings, its clasp, frames, crossbars, posts, and bases, the covering of ram skins dyed red, the covering of hides of sea cows, and the shielding curtain, the ark of testimony with its poles, and the atonement cover, the table with all its articles, and the bread of the presence, the pure gold lampstands with its rows of lamps, and all its accessories, and the oil for the light, the gold altar, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, and the curtain for the entrance to the tent, the bronze altar with its bronze grating, its poles, and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the curtains of the courtyard with its posts and bases, and the curtain for the entrance to the courtyard, the ropes and tent pegs for the courtyard, all the furnishings for the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and the woven garments worn for ministering in the sanctuary, both the sacred garments for Aaron and the priests, and the garments for his sons when serving as priests. The Israelites had done all the work just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses inspected the work and saw that they had done it just as the Lord had commanded. So Moses blessed them. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Place the ark of the testimony in it, and shield the ark with the curtain. Bring in the table and set out what belongs on it. Then bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. Place the gold altar of incense in front of the ark of the testimony, and put the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it. Set up the courtyard around it, and put the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate it and all its furnishings, and it will be holy. Then anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils. Consecrate the altar, and it will be most holy. Anoint the basin and its stand, and consecrate them. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. Then dress Aaron in the sacred garment. Anoint him and consecrate him, so he may serve me as priest." He put the bases in place, erected the frame, inserted the crossbars, and set up the posts. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering over the tent as the Lord commanded him. He took the testimony and placed it in the ark, attached the poles to the ark, and put the atonement cover over it. Then he brought the ark into the tabernacle and hung the shielding curtain and shielded the ark of the testimony as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the tabernacle and the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle, outside the curtain, and set out the bread on it before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and set up the lamp before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain, and burned fragrant incense on it, as the Lord commanded him. Then he put up the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering near the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and offered on it burnt offerings and grain offerings, as the Lord commanded him. He placed the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it for washing. And Moses and Aaron had his sons use it to wash their hands and feet. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle, an altar, and put up the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. As so, Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, and in the sight of all the house of Israel during all their travels. That's our first reading. Our second reading comes from the book of Leviticus, chapter 27. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if anyone makes a special vow to dedicate persons to the Lord by giving equivalent values, set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. And if it is a female, set her value at 30 shekels. If it is a person between the ages of 5 and 20, set the value of a male at 20 shekels, and of a female at 10 shekels. It is a person between 1 month and 5 years, set the value of a male at 5 shekels of silver, and that of a female at 3 shekels of silver. If it is a person 60 years old or more, set the value of a male at 15 shekels, and of a female at 10 shekels. If anyone making the vow is too poor to pay the specified amount, he is to present the person to the priest, who will set the value for him according to what the man making the vow can afford. If what he vowed is an animal that is acceptable as an offering to the Lord, such an animal given to the Lord becomes holy. He must not exchange it or substitute a good one for a bad one, or a bad one for a good one. If he should substitute one animal for another, both it and the substitute become holy. If what he vows is a ceremonially unclean animal, one that is not acceptable as sin offering to the Lord, the animal must be presented to the priest, who will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever value the priest then sets is then what it will be. If the owner wishes to redeem the animal, he must add a fifth to its value. A man dedicated his house as something holy to the Lord. The priest will judge its quality as good or bad, whatever values the priest then sets. So it will remain. If the man who dedicates his house redeems it, he must add a fifth to the value. The house will again become his. If a man dedicates to the Lord part of his family land, its value is to be set according to the amount of seed required for it. 50 shekels of silver for a homer of barley seed. If he dedicates his field during the year of Jubilee, the value that has been set remains. If he dedicates his field after the Jubilee, the priest will determine the value according to the number of years that remain until the next year of Jubilee, and its set value will be reduced. If the man who dedicates the field wishes to redeem it, he must add a fifth to its value, and the field will again become his. If, however, he does not redeem the field, or if he has sold it to someone else, it can never be redeemed. When the field is released in the Jubilee, it will become holy like a field devoted to the Lord. It will become the property of the priests. If a man dedicates to the Lord a field he has bought, which is not part of his family land, the priest will determine its value up to the year of Jubilee, and the man must pay its value on that day as something holy to the Lord. In the year of Jubilee, the field will revert to the person from whom he bought it, the one whose land it was. Every value is to be set according to the sanctuary shekel, 20 gerahs to the shekel. No one, however, may dedicate the firstborn of an animal, since the firstborn already belongs to the Lord. Whether an ox or a sheep, it is the Lord's. If it is of one that is unclean, he may buy it back at its set value, adding a fifth of the value to it. If he does not redeem it, it is to be sold at its set value. But nothing that a man owns and devotes to the Lord, whether man or animal or family land, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most holy to the Lord. No person devoted to destruction may be redeemed. He must be put to death. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the tree, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. If a man redeems any of his tithe, he must add a fifth of the value to it. The entire tithe of the herd and the flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod, will be holy to the Lord. He must not pick out the good from the bad, or make any substitution. If he does make a substitution, both the animal and its substitute become holy, cannot be redeemed. These are the commands the Lord gave Moses on Mount Sinai for the Israelites. There ends our second reading. And lastly, our Psalm 83, a song of Asaph. O God, do not keep silent. Do not be quiet, O God. Be not still. See how your enemies are astir, how your foes rear their heads. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. With one mind they plot together, they force an allegiance against you, the tents of Edom and Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the people of Tyre. Even Assyria has joined them, to lend strength to the descendants of Lot. Do to them as you did to Midian, as you did to Sisera and Jabin at the river Kishon, who perished at Ender, and became like refuse on the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, all the princes like Zeba and Zalmunna, who said, let us take possession of the pasture land of God. Make them like tumbleweeds, O my God, like chaff before the wind, as fire consumes the forest, or a flame sets the mountain ablaze. So pursue them with your tempest, and terrify them with your storm. Cover their faces with shame, so that men will seek your name, O Lord. May they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, that you alone are the Most High over all the earth. Amen. This is the ending of our last reading. This psalm reminds God of the things in which he did in the past. I know one time I was asked to sell contracts, sort of covenants, to my customers at Canadian Linen. And I tried everything, and nothing worked in order to get them to sign these contracts. And finally, the one person, I said to them, you know what? Like, we've been doing this contract with you for the last 20 years. Like, I don't understand what the problem is here. It's just another contract just like that. And they said, oh, great. Well, I'll sign here then. And they signed. And I thought, what? But the thing is many people don't really need an explanation as much as they just need the assurance that they've done this before and they weren't burned before. So why not do it again? And so this is what we see here. They're reminding God, do it again. Do it again like you did before. We loved what you did before. Do it again. Make these enemies feel like they should never mess with you, because you are the Lord, their God. As it says at the end, you alone are the Most High over all the earth. Yeah, we just need to remind ourselves who is the Most High over our lives. Now we see this redemption also in chapter 27, as it gives all the different values for the various people. And then it talks about redemption in the sense of when you're enslaved, or when you need to know what the value of your land will be. Well, it all should align with the year of Jubilee, because the year of Jubilee is when you're out of your debt. So they always valued it in accordance to when their debt would be released, and that would be during the year of Jubilee, which is an amazing time, and it's an amazing concept because it means that people aren't enslaved forever. There's a time limit. It's set, and everyone understands that they work until that point in time. So it gives them a goal to work towards, that if they're enslaved, or if they don't, so they won't lose hope. And then it goes on to talk about tithing and how that works with the land. And then, it just talks about how we are not to be devoted to destruction, but be devoted to the Lord, for these are the commands that the Lord gave to Moses at Mount Sinai with the Israelites. And lastly, we talk about Exodus chapters 39 and 40, where it goes through all the priestly garments. It's very interesting, the amount of work that's put into this, and that each tribe was inscribed upon the breastpiece of the of the priests in order that they may not forget. And remember, and then they have these two stones, the Uman and Thummim, that are beside the heart in order that their decisions might be close to heart, that it might be close to the heart of God. And then Moses inspects the tabernacle and then gives details about setting up the tabernacle and when you set it up. And it's very interesting. They would set it up, and then if God's presence wouldn't leave, well, then they'd stick around until God's presence left. It was all orientated by whether God was with them or not. If God was in the tabernacle, they would stay in that place. If God was out of the tabernacle, they would move with him. It shows this intimacy of relationship that they had with God. I just pray that we would also have that same intimacy, that we would seek God's glory, and that when we see God moving, that we would move with God. I pray that you would have a day in which you would understand the glory that God fills in your life, and that you would express that glory back to God. Ask that you might lift me up in prayer as we go through this Bible in a year, and I pray for you that you might grow in the knowledge and wisdom and fear of the Lord. Have a blessed day.